Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Art of Healthy Retirement podcast. And our podcast goal, which I've been talking about this year in 2023, is to support business experts who are transforming from a career into healthy retirement, or those business experts who have retired. And this format is free flowing, so 30 minutes to an hour on Zoom, posted on my YouTube channel, Nancy Schwartz. And the interview focuses on how our guests are living or will be living their ideal retirement with health. And no interview is the same, and that's the joy of the discussion. We are disrupting the way you think about healthy retirement in real time. Each podcast is educational in content and offers inspiration to others by showcasing the guests living life on their own terms. And I'm so excited for you to meet Alfred Poor. And Alfred is a health tech futurist, a speaker and virtual event expert with an international reputation in technology fields. And he was the editor of Health Tech Insider, that covered wearables and mobile devices for health and medical applications. He also helps company executives make a better impression in video meetings and online presentations. As a graduate of Harvard College, he's the co-author of 15 books and is widely quoted in all major media outlets. He has a lot of energy and humor, which I love. And one of the things that Alfred has back in his past is that he's a vet tech writer, very long time in this industry, and a long time alum of the PC magazine. That Alfred, I remember reading that. I was so excited, and was there for over 2 decades. He participated in the publication's first Printer Blockbuster and was the lead analyst on the business display. And why I invited Alfred onto this podcast is he has a broad grasp of digital health developments and the impact that they will have on healthcare, particularly in the US, but also worldwide. He's also a disruptor, which I love, of healthcare's future, and grounding that in figures, case studies, and the latest research from the labs. So welcome, everyone. My name is Nancy Schwartz, and I'm founder of Envision a Healthy Retirement. And welcome, Alfred. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Well, I've been looking forward to this. This should be a lot of fun.
Oh, great. So, Alfred, I would love to know how you moved from, your many decades of, as a global, if you will, media expert in health, into really a semi-retirement, correct? But you're still going 100%, lots of guns going in different projects. Well, explain to our audience, and maybe they can learn from you, what was that transition like for you? And tell us what you're doing now.
Sure. So that I think, first of all, I don't consider myself as retired.
Okay.
Still in there slugging away. And just for context, I should let people know I turned 72 this summer.
Hey, awesome. Yay, congratulations.
So I'm kind of over my sell-by date.
No, you're not.
But basically, I thank you for the kind introduction. My history includes disparate activities from teaching middle school science to being the public relations person for a rural school district in Connecticut, to writing for the computer magazines and other technology outlets, to being an expert in displays and televisions for consumers, and more recently in the last 9 years, covering the wearable and mobile device market. And you look at that and it's kind of checkered. You sort of say, how does a college bio major end up following that career path? And my point is that when you stand here and look backwards, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Basically, I like to say that my superpower is my ability to explain complex concepts to people in a way that they can then put to use, to practical use. And that's what I enjoy doing. It's what I'm good at. And that's what I built my career out of.
And that is the superpower, people. That is the superpower in terms of leadership. Yes.
And along the way, I've hardly ever held a job. So, which is also kind of different. When they were growing up, I'm sure my kids didn't have the slightest idea about how to describe what my job was, because it wasn't anybody else's normal kind of situation. But basically, my feeling is if I can help people and I can have fun doing it, I'll keep doing it. And if I can make some money along the way, that's even better, because that helps me afford to be able to do it. But it's more the engagement and cognitive, socially, solving puzzles, dealing with challenges, little and big. Those are still engaging for me, still activities that I enjoy doing. And so I take my naps when I want, and I and I do lots of stuff with the grandchildren and all that, but I would, I count myself as still working full time.
Awesome. That's totally cool. So tell us, what are some of the problems that you're solving? What are the situations that intrigue you in the world today?
So even though I just recently stopped publishing Health Tech Insider, I still follow that health, the wearable and mobile health technology fields. And I'm struck by how technology is helping us solve what look to be intractable problems. Our healthcare system, as it existed prior to the pandemic and made worse by the pandemic, is unsustainable. Costs are going up. We're having shortages of trained healthcare professionals. Whole segments, the nursing workforce is burned out. Hard to get people to join it, and they feel overworked and underpaid. Hospitals, especially rural hospitals, are closing because they can't make it financially. We have just all these problems, and they all existed before the pandemic. I like to say that the pandemic really didn't make anything happen. It just accelerated a lot of the things, good and bad, that were already going. And obviously one of the positives is telehealth. The VA, I give the Veterans Administration a lot of credit for establishing telehealth as a viable option for healthcare well before the pandemic. And if you're familiar with how medical licensing works in this country, you have to be licensed by the state. And a lot of states have rules about you have to be in the presence of the patient. And there's just a lot of stuff that's behind the curve on this. The VA, to their credit, kind of bulldozed their way through a lot of that, because they had a huge portion of their constituents, of their veterans, especially those in need of mental health services, who lived, hours, days away from the centers where they could get treatment. And so the VA said, we can't be everywhere, and they pushed telehealth. And telehealth was a low-hanging fruit application for mental health issues. But as we've seen, it's turned out to be incredibly useful in lots of other kinds of situations. And because of the groundwork that was laid by the Veterans Administration when the pandemic hit, we had Teledoc, we had a bunch of other programs, companies in place. And just like Zoom blew up when the pandemic hit, well, these other telehealth companies and things like that just had a rocket strapped to their backs, and they took off. And one of the interesting things about telehealth, just to go one step further, is I used to think about it being a solution for sparsely populated areas. This is a New Mexico problem. This is a problem for upstate Maine where people are spread out and it's hard to get to. No, it's, it's North Philly. It's Detroit. It's,
Yeah.
It's urban areas where you have people who may have transportation issues, they may have mobility issues. In a lot of cases, especially with elderly patients, they need a family member to accompany them and take hours riding public transportation to get to where they're going. And, then sit and wait, and then maybe have to go see somebody else or get lab work done or what. And so the family member ends up taking a day off from work and not getting paid, which they can't afford to do. And, it all cascades. And so telehealth has turned out to be immensely beneficial in ways that I don't think we really were able to foresee.
Yeah, I think telehealth is such a wonderful tool to come into the home setting, because usually a patient gets very nervous when they go into particularly those who really need care. We're talking either seniors or somebody with a chronic illness of some sort, and that they remain comfortable in their home, they feel safe and protected. And for all the reasons that you listed, they're not exhausted by the time they get to the doctor, because many times, as you say, it's rural areas or the transportation. If we don't get this link to that link, we're not going to make it there that day, even though we really did try.
Yep.
So I think that that's great. And also simply the simplicity of having the attention of the doctor on demand.
Yeah.
If there's a critical need, or there's a question for the office, or one of these things. And I think, as we all, and you use this word, Alfred, aging in place, I think that, my father's hope was always to die at home, and that didn't happen. And I felt as the provider that was really in violation of really his vision, right? Mm-hmm. And so now we really have an opportunity to, I think you can argue the point both sides. You need those office visits, et cetera, to, touch and feel, right? Oh, yeah. And the physician needs to look at you, but more of the maintenance phases really can be handled by not only the physicians, but functional medicine people and nutritionists, and many of the surrounding, what shall we say, peripheral services that a patient needs. And so, yeah.
And it's gone far beyond just having a conversation with the doctor on your computer. I mean, remote patient monitoring is a big deal.
Yes.
You mentioned chronic conditions. There are many chronic conditions where just going in twice a year and getting some vital signs taken really isn't sufficient.
Exactly.
You have patients with heart failure, and if you can notice that they put on some weight,
right,
over a short period of time, you can send a nurse out to check on them, adjust their medications, and control it. If you don't, and that gets missed, eventually, they're in respiratory distress. You've got an ambulance ride, you've got a hospital admission, you're spending hundreds of times more for something that could have been treated, not prevented, but could have been treated more efficiently earlier. And that's, to me, where the multiplication comes in. If we don't take things to the crisis point, if we don't get to the point where it's an acute problem, if we can identify the disease earlier, treat it earlier, and we're seeing all kinds of progress with that, with diabetes, with
yes,
COPD, all kinds of different chronic conditions.
Yeah, I was just going to mention diabetes, because that's skyrocketing right now in terms of people's health, but it's also the educational portion of it too. What can people do in addition to the medicines? But it's a lifestyle. So to be able to have access to a lifestyle, I don't know a health coach perhaps that's attached, or as a referral to the patient, because they have to be active in their care as well as the physicians, if you will, supervising the chronic conditions.
we're seeing some amazing results. And, we're actually type 2 diabetes, the acquired type, can be reversed.
Yes,
Where
it
people
can.
through lifestyle changes and diet and exercise and all that have managed to get off insulin, to get,
Exactly.
to heal themselves. The problem is that that's a drastic change for a large portion of the population.
Yes.
You look at the obesity rate, fat shaming is a thing, and I don't mean to put people down for being overweight, but the fact is being overweight is a determinant of your health, and it's a
Scientific fact.
to some degree it's a choice, and some people choose not to address it, and I get how difficult it is. I mean, I've got weight that I've been overweight my entire adult life, so I certainly understand how difficult it can be to address that. But we're making great progress, and some of the things that just absolutely amazes me is the whole area of digital therapeutics. The fact that a doctor can prescribe an app on my phone for me for therapeutic value is mind-blowing.
Explain that to our audience. What are you talking about? A little more detail.
So many of these programs started again with mental health. According to whatever numbers you read, somewhere between 40 and 60% of all adults in the US are struggling with some form of mental health problem as a result of the pandemic. Anxiety, stress, depression,
Exhaustion,
whatever.
overwhelm.
And I tend to think of the population needs as sort of a pyramid. At the top you have the people who have the really acute needs and need very intensive treatment, but at the very bottom you've got a lot of people whose problems are manageable, and if you can get a digital solution, some mindfulness exercises on their phone, different kinds of things. A lot of them are based on what's called cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and extremely effective. You may have heard of Noom, which is a very effective weight loss program, and that's based on CBT. So it's not brainwashing, it's not hypnotizing you or anything like that, but it's just helping you reframe the situation and giving you some tools that you can use when you find you're in a situation where you need to behave differently. And so mental health was one of the early ones to be addressed. Every citizen in Germany who's eligible for the state health, for the government-run health system, has free access to a digital therapeutic mental health app. It's just included in their coverage. It's there. And so it's solutions like that will help a lot of people deal with that lower level of anxiety, depression, stress, whatever the challenges might be. Those who aren't helped by that then can move up to where the healthcare professionals are better equipped to help them. But it also means that the healthcare professionals don't spend their time on the less acute kinds of issues, and so it multiplies the kinds of efforts that we've got available. And to me, that's the leverage that we need. So leave the healthcare professionals to work at the highest level of their training, and do the things that are most effective, and find other ways to meet the needs of patients without that. And we've got to do things like that in order to make the whole healthcare system more cost effective and efficient.
So who in your thought process there should be driving that? Is it the insurance industry, or is it prescription via the doctor, or how would that work?
So I'm kind of free market kind of idea, and I don't think this works just because you say it should. I think it works when it costs less and delivers better results. And when that happens, it just naturally, if if you remove the artificial barriers. I believe that naturally all cars, go out and buy a car with a manual transmission. You can't find one. Why?
Right.
Because it's cheaper, more efficient, more everything to have an automatic transmission. The market has, just demanded it, and that's what we have. And so I think it's the same kind of thing. I am a fan of the FDA. I know that they act slowly. I know that their requirements can be constraining, but I'm old enough to remember thalidomide. So
yes,
I don't mind if they go a little slow.
yes.
Let's not rush in and make mistakes. We kind of did some rushing with the pandemic, and there was a lot more emergency authorizations for different kinds of treatments and so forth, which I can understand. But I think that really needs to be the exception. I think we need science-based, clinically proven treatments that are going to work at least as well as the standard, the usual standard of care.
Yeah, yeah.
But once you've got that, it should succeed simply because patients will want it, doctors will want it, the payers, insurance companies will want it because they're paying less in order to get the same results or better. I mean, one of the things that blows me away, I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of hospital in the home. It is now cheaper to put a hospital care setting in your own home than it is to admit a patient to the hospital.
Yeah.
And it's not for everybody, it's not for all situations, but with the remote patient monitoring and so forth, you can keep as good a track of those people, and they get to stay in their own bed usually, and they're eating their own food, and they're surrounded by their own cycle. They don't have people walking up and down the halls at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And it's just a better situation, and it's cheaper. It's cheaper for the payers than putting them in the hospital. Now, obviously, there are situations where I want to be in the hospital.
Of course. Of
right?
course.
But we're expanding how treatment's going, and we're seeing healthcare move out into the community, back into the community even.
Yes.
In
yes.
ways that we haven't seen. We're seeing house calls. There's systems now that provide either physicians or other trained healthcare professionals who come to your home to deal with things rather than you have to go to a clinical setting. It's remarkable to me, but that's that kind of leverage that I think is the market will find the winners, and that'll be good.
Yes.
Which leads right into aging in place, because again, aging in place for me is talks about the 95% of the aging population who say they would rather stay in their own home as long as they can do so safely and independently. It's a lot cheaper. I mean, just going into a high-level managed care facility, not a nursing facility, but just managed care,
assisted living, right?
Retirement kind of home. It costs what, 4 or 5 times as much as it costs to live in your own home.
Yeah.
And for some families, that's it's just not an option.
Yeah.
So the financial issues are huge, but fortunately, technology is making it much more feasible for the elderly, for seniors to choose to stay in their own homes without being an added burden to their caregivers or to their family members. And that's where I see a lot of very interesting stuff going on.
So what if you are aging in place and you have the ability to buy products to help you age in place, what in your really professional opinion are some of the top diagnostic or what would you recommend people consider? Or if you're on the other side, if you're power of attorney or your family and you're in that situation. So depending on the caregiving needs, if you will, but from a generalist point of view.
Well, I'm actually wearing all those hats. My mother's 101 and
Oh my gosh! Wow.
lives six hours from here, by herself in a single family home with no immediate neighbors.
Wow.
And I'm the one primarily responsible for supporting her and keeping tabs on her and helping her out with stuff. So there's that, and then also again, I'm of a certain maturity, and I'm thinking ahead to my kids have kids and families. There are lots of things that are keeping them busy, and I want to make sure that we're set up in such a way that they don't have to worry about us, and to make it easy for them to take care of us. So the aging in place problem, I break it down into two distinct stages, and it's all about impairment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so the first step is simply being aware of the progression of impairment.
Mm.
And when I'm talking about impairments, I'm talking about physical ones, but I'm also talking about cognitive ones.
Mm-hmm.
And the first lesson about impairments is do not ask the individual how they're doing, because they're going to lie. I mean, they don't mean to lie, but how you doing? I'm doing fine. It's not so bad. I'm good. Is it taking you longer to get out of bed? Are you eating your meals? No, I'm fine. It's all good. So things can be declining, but as individuals, we kind of push the curve back up and say, no, we're all right. And so the trick is to be aware of when that decline goes below the line, goes below the line, at which point they become a danger to themselves, that
Yes.
they're at risk of something more serious happening. Again, early detection right. and adjustments prevent really bad stuff from happening. It's much more expensive and can be fatal. But so the first step is to be aware of the impairment and aware of the health. And cognitively, it can be a slow decline, dementia, just aging and just not being able to process things as well as you could before. But it can be sudden, like a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with physical, arthritis, different muscular, skeletal kinds of issues over time slow you down and can get in the way of completing your daily activities. Or it can be a fall,
right,
which is a sudden incident that can lead to very acute kinds of problems. And so for me, as the caregiver, as the support family member, I want to know when it looks like there's been enough of a change that maybe we need to assess what's going on. And so one of the things that everybody's familiar with are the PERS devices, a personal emergency response system, the help I've fallen and I can't get up buttons, which almost universally seniors don't like. I liken it to being in kindergarten and your mom would pin a note to your sweater for your for your teacher. I mean, it just removes agency. It's so embarrassing, and a lot of people just don't want to do it. Or they forget to keep it charged, or they leave it on the bedside table. I mean, there's a lot of things that can go on with it. One of the big problems is seniors don't use them. There have been a number of studies that I've found over the years, and they studied seniors who were in a situation where they clearly needed assistance. I mean, it wasn't marginal, fallen and there was serious injury or, some problem. They had access to a PERS device. Do you want to guess what the average response rate was for how many pushed the button?
Probably under 1%, maybe.
It was 7%.
Okay, 7%.
Yeah, less than 1 in 10.
1 in 10. Wow.
And I don't blame them. Because it's not that bad. if I just lie here on the floor for a while, I'll be okay. I'll be able to get up in a while. I did something stupid. I'm embarrassed. I don't want somebody to know the stupid thing I did. I shouldn't have done that. Or the big one is, I don't want my children to know, because then they'll think that I can't live by myself anymore.
Right, the autonomy.
Which is, I totally get that. But as the caregiver, I would want them to have a way to summon help if they need it. But I also want to take away from them the choice whether or not people are notified when you have an incident.
Right.
And so for me, any solution needs to have a passive element. And I love to say, all families are the same in different ways. There's no one solution. One senior will be perfectly happy having a camera in their home, that people can check on them. Other people say, no way are you going to have a camera in my house. And so finding the right balance of intrusiveness and detection, and what years and years ago, when we started down this journey, I asked my mom, how, if you should fall or something happened to you, how long would you want it to be before somebody knew? And she said, 2 or 3 days. Needless to say, that was not an acceptable answer. We've negotiated something that's a little more responsive than that. But the point is, you need some sort of objective measure to see how they're doing their daily activities, if there's something sudden, or if there's this slow decline. So that's part one, being aware of the impairments as they develop. And then part two is compensating for those impairments. And for some, technology can't help, but for others, they can, like a stair glide to be able to take you up and down the stairs. Simple solution to a mobility problem. But one of the big ones, just across the board, is medication. I think it's like $3 billion a year in unnecessary healthcare costs, simply because people don't take their meds the way they're supposed to. $3 billion, that's money we could use in some other ways that could be pretty useful. And so, there are lots of solutions of varying degrees of technology and complication, but there's a robot that will sit on your kitchen counter, and you stand in front of it. It recognizes your face as being, this person who lives in this house, and it whirs a bit, drops the pills in the cup, and registers that you took it.
Like those pill dispensers in the hospital. That's for the home. Very cool. I love that. I didn't know about that. That's
there are a couple of them. But there are also just smart pill boxes that wirelessly connect to your home network, and will at least register when the different compartments were opened. Doesn't prove that you took them, but at least at least you took them. But so there's a lot of things that can be done along that line that will help make sure that you're doing the basics. We have smart scales to check to make sure that you're not gaining or losing weight rapidly. We've got home blood pressure cuffs, but those are always a challenge. I mean, a lot of people don't like the squeezing. It's not pleasant. There are, just within the past year, there are now products out that can measure blood pressure without a pressure cuff. It's still a little early on them, but we're not that far from just being able to turn on your phone and turn on the camera and have it look at your face and take your blood pressure.
Oh, that's great.
And
also, for the physician, many of the physicians don't like the home models because they say it's not as good as the office reading and things like that. So that
Yeah,
really
well,
could be a win-win.
Well, first of all, in order to be sold as a blood pressure measuring device, you have to prove that you are at least as good as the international standard
Right.
for the FDA, which, if you look into it, is pretty lousy. There's quite a wide range of readings that are still within the standard.
So that's their bias, right? They
should get, well, no, but the same thing's true about the ones their techs are using in their office.
Yeah.
And they're all built to the same standard. But these new ones are at least as good as that. And again, non-contact. And the other big thing about something like blood pressure is you get it taken twice a year in the doctor's office. They really don't know anything.
Right.
It's only when you have the longitudinal record of how it's gone up and down and how it's changed over time. Again, being able to detect a problem early on before it accelerates, and all you might need is just a tweak in your medication, and that could take care of it. So things like weight, blood pressure. I mean, there's a lot of these things that SpO2, the oxygenation of your blood.
Yes.
A lot of devices are now doing that. Some to medical standards, others less so. I mean, my Fitbit gives me a reading. I don't know how accurate it is, but it's enough for me to say, okay, yeah, I'm not either having a problem at night or I'm just fine. I'm at the 97%, 98% where I should be. So,
right.
But being able to have that kind of information, and then the other fact is that these things are connected wirelessly to your system. I can monitor my results on my phone anywhere, and for many of these devices, I could send it to my doctor, or I could send it to my son, so that he could keep track of it. So it's we're getting a lot of options, which is what I think we need. Again, no one size fits all. We need solutions that will be give you lots of choices to address different things. I mean, mobility. What's happening with exoskeletons? These, science fiction movie kinds of stuff, where you strap on stuff to help you get up and out, up and down out of chairs, be able to walk.
It's incredible.
And we're getting into what they call soft robotics. So instead of being something that looks like some, metallic brace contraption, it can just be a pair of pants that's got inflatable cells in it that, provide the force where you need it. But, vision, hearing is a big one. As I hope more people are aware that Congress and the FDA have made it possible to buy hearing aids over the counter without seeing an audiologist, without a prescription, just being able to buy them. One of the problems is we have people who are selling $100 items and $400 items and $4,000 items, and it's going to be hard for consumers to know which one is going to be appropriate for them. At this point, if you have severe hearing loss, you're still going to end up going to an audiologist and getting an expensive pair. But for people with mild to moderate hearing loss, there are a lot of products now that are under $1,000 for the pair, $400 for a pair, that may be able to provide a lot of relief for you. Hearing is one of the big problems with as a precursor to health problems. We've all known people who lost their hearing was lost, and they get tired of saying what, and the family members get tired of repeating themselves, and very quickly they're trained to just be quiet and sit in the corner and not participate in the conversations and not know what's going on and just read their book or watch their television or whatever it is. And that social isolation is a precursor to lots of health problems. And this is
Yeah.
not, this is proven by lots of studies.
Cognitive decline, loneliness, that there's just a million.
Heart disease. I mean,
Yes.
it goes on and on. I may have mentioned this in an earlier conversation with you, but did you realize, are you aware of the fact that in the United Kingdom, they have a cabinet position for the Minister of Loneliness? And that, to me, says it all. I mean, that's such, social engagement, social isolation is such an important social determinant of health that they've actually created a cabinet position for it. Because if you invest in keeping people engaged and connected, you're going to spend less money on healthcare.
Exactly.
It just again, that's that market. It's going to come back as savings that you're going to see. Now in England, they have a national health system, so money you save here is going to mean less money you spend here. In the US, it's more complicated because who might be paying for that program isn't going to get reimbursed by the insurance company that isn't going to be paying the healthcare costs. So
right.
It's more complicated here than it is in some countries.
It is sometimes. Well, Alfred, I have literally a notebook full of questions, so you must come back. But I didn't get to hardly any because it's so interesting. But in closing, if you could tell us in your incredible vision of the future, what do you see in healthcare? We're talking about the now and all the incredible things that are here. And maybe some companies that are in really early stage development, or maybe of some trends that investors are really interested in. I know longevity is a big category now in terms of what investors are pushing forward. What thoughts could you give us in terms of what do you see on the next decade, where when you and I are going to talk, of course we'll talk before then, but if we talk in our anniversary at 10 years, what are we saying?
So one of the things that's here now, I mean, I've been following this technology for 8-10 years, something like that. Have you seen the TV ads for a thing called a Wallabot? It looks through the wall and finds your studs, but it can also find electrical wires.
Yes, I have. Yes.
Okay, that technology is created by a company called Vayar, and they are based in Israel. That technology originally was designed to be a scanner that could image tumors, cancer tumors, below the skin.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's where they began.
Very cool.
But the Wallabot became a low-hanging fruit method of getting revenue to develop the technology further. They now have a little panel, looks like a little white picture frame that you hang on the wall, and it does fall detection. It can tell people moving in the room. Currently, it's for a single room. They typically recommend you put it in the bathroom. It's not for homes that have pets because they can get confused by the presence of a pet. However, the technology, the potential for this, and they've already demonstrated a lot of these. They were demonstrating these years ago. So I mean, they've already got it. They are able to identify multiple people in a room. They're able to identify them as individuals, so they know who is who. They can tell between standing and sitting and lying down. They can tell if they fall. They can do respiration rate for each individual in the room.
Wow.
And so, if they've fallen and they're not breathing, it knows. If they're fallen and they're breathing rapidly, that it knows. And so that information ultimately will be available to trigger alerts, notifications for people. They've even got the early stages of being able to tell heart rate. And
Wow.
all this from a little plaque that sits on the wall. It's not a camera. It's just radio waves. No different than the Wi-Fi waves that are in your home already. I mean, it's as benign as you can get. So they're not alone. I mean, there's lots of companies that are building it into ceiling lights. For the most part, they're aiming initially, again, low-hanging fruit. They're looking at managed care facilities.
Sure.
Where you would put this into each room so you would know when there's a bed exit, when you know that there's a resident has fallen. But that technology is going to come into our homes faster than I think even I imagine it, because it gets up to scale, then all of a sudden it becomes affordable, and it's within the reach of the average consumer. Another wrinkle in that is, and I'm still puzzled as why it hasn't happened, but the home security companies should be all over this. I mean, they've got the market. Seniors want home security systems. Unfortunately, they watch the 5 o'clock news and scares the heck out of them. And so they're, going to be buying these things. So, but these companies know what's happening outside the home. They also know what's going on inside the home, and they should be embracing this aging in place, monitoring people in the home situation. So they're getting their toes in it, but there's so much more they could do. So if there's an area of investment, I would love to see some of these giant security systems realize that there's an unmet need that they could address. Maybe it's not going to be the biggest part of their business, but just in supporting their customers, I just think it's something that they ought to do.
Yeah, but who's to say?
And they could make a living.
Who's to say it's going to be not the biggest? I mean, I think we're all living longer, decades longer, right? There's the potential.
Yeah.
I see it like you see it. I absolutely see it. Yeah.
But yeah, so I envision the smart home, sort of the definition of a smart home expanding. One that's not just responding to your individual demands, but actually supporting your lifestyle and your hopes and how you want to live your life, without adding a burden to your caregivers, to your family members, to your loved ones. And so that's where I would like to see things go. We certainly have the technology, and so hopefully they'll be able to make it happen.
Yeah, well, I embrace your vision. I'm the first one on board, and coming with you, because I love that idea. And Alfred, thank you so much. You're just such an amazing human. I'm so glad that I have met you. If our audience, I would love to contact you for any of your services, and
Sure.
How do they reach you? So
the biggest thing that I'm looking for is the opportunity to speak to the audiences about this, about aging in place, and also for employers. I mean, one of the big problems is that as many as 40% of a company's employees, adult employees, are caring for someone other than children, and on average, they're spending 20 hours a week in unpaid caregiving services.
If not more, Alfred, I did it, so I can tell you.
Well, no, but I would say on average.
Right.
Right. But that's another half-time job in addition to the full-time job they're working for you. So I feel that the enlightened employers are going to be able to do more for the caregivers to support them, especially with dealing with aging in place caregiving recipients. So looking to talk to audiences, I'm a keynote speaker, so I'm looking for paid opportunities to speak to groups, and that I'm available for that. If people want to reach me, it's really easy. My website is alfredpoor.com, and you can email me at alfred@alfredpoor.com. So it doesn't get much simpler than that.
So Alfred, thank you so much for your great wisdom and intuition and your technical and medical knowledge. We're so thrilled to have had you. And I hope that you will come back someday.
Absolutely. We
And
just scratched the surface.
I know.
There's so much more.
I have a whole notebook full of questions. Oh, I only got a few in.
This is the start of the conversation.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you again, and much success to you. And please stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.